As the eldest daughter of these two formidable humans, I grew up in a balance of privilege and deficit. As immigrants, my parents did not have a village, though they worked hard to create the best they could around us. But I grew up being different and bullied. I took my turn bullying also, and I didn't like it. So in many ways, during my formative years as a child and as an adolescent, I was already moved and nudged and choosing to be on the edge of modern culture. When I became a mother at 20, this intensified. It had been intensifying during my pregnancy. I had chosen to seek out midwives and give birth at home. I was more scared of giving birth in a hospital among strangers and having my body clench up and refuse to open around these strangers and doctors and nurses who were so coming at me with authority about my own body that I chose to go with midwives who were practicing midwifery illegally in Canada at the time. And these incredible women, with their lived experience of direct learning from birth to be attendants at birth, empowered me in ways that I have only really come to more deeply see and appreciate now that I myself have crossed the 50-year-old line. These incredible women who were willing to do the incredibly difficult work of reclaiming birth for women from the hands of the medical establishment, from doctors who were so-called authorities on how women's bodies bring babies into the world. This experience, this first birth giving that I did, was really an initiation. And for every woman, it is an initiation, one of the very few that is still available to us in this day and age, where modern culture has eliminated the initiatory rites, completely misunderstanding their necessity. And no wonder. When I think about what this world could be right now, if more women of my generation had been empowered by midwives to give birth at home and had come to thereby know themselves as forces of nature, who had been able to have their instincts nurtured, talked about, pointed to, validated like mine were. My son and his brother, who came a few years later, were not circumcised. My children did not get the medical procedures that were mandated by the times, unless after very detailed investigation, I chose to have that procedure happen. It doesn't even matter to me which ones I chose and which ones I didn't. And if you chose to circumcise a male baby, I will not judge you, because we are all doing the best we can with what we have at the time. And in these times, so much is kept from us. So much empowering support, information, the opportunity to make an informed decision. And we are stuck with all kinds of decisions that we unconsciously made, dictating our lives, creating the world. and as an edge-working, home-birthing, empowered mother, I was also given more of a taste of the other ways that a human being can be a force of nature. I was pretty fucking excited about this as a young mother. I was pretty high on the gloriousness of skin to skin nursing these babies who were so delectably fragile and powerful at the same time. I was delighted by my ability to be resourceful on a very low budget, having chosen not to put my children in care, in someone else's care, but to be with them and learn with them and be a space holder for them when their emotions were big and as they learned and as they explored the world. I was saying no to conventional medicine. I was saying no to conventional schooling. I was saying no to so many conventions. And I had the glorious power of youth on my side, an incredible imagination and visionary capacity. And I had these children to live for and live with. And I entirely underestimated my ability to withstand sleep deprivation, the stripping of dignity, or the attempts to strip my dignity, got through to me. The judgment and criticism that came at me from well-meaning but ignorant and disempowered people using power to be right and out of fear, the effect on me, the consequences on me and on my children have reached far and deep. And the pain that I've suffered and the pain that I've watched my children suffer, I wish on nobody. And yet, I will be glad if you happen to have ever got to feel such pain, because of what I know it does. It carves out space in my being. It has carved out space in my being, because these emotions and these feelings growing so big inside me have made me expand, have forced me to look away from the known and into the unknown. They've pushed me further to the edge of myself and the edge of modern culture. And in my refusal to take it, or to continue taking it once I reached a limit, I've looked out into the unknown and I have seen things. I have tried things, I've done things, I've learned things, and I've healed things that I think more people in the world need to know about, want to know about. And so on this day, the day that I became a mother 30 years ago, the day that I stand in my bedroom window overlooking the backyard, wondering if, like on so many of my possibility team call days before, my son has found his way to this place. My son, who at 30 has been addicted to heroin, has been as if possessed by demons at times. This is the first birthday that I've observed of his where I don't expect to be in touch with him. Because in all the mess that came up in our relationship, his need to turn his back ferociously on me as a source of what he identifies as his pain. And my decision to turn away from him instead of trying to save him and rescue him has meant that there is a separation between us that scares me so much. And I am not ashamed to say that I am scared, because nothing about my anger and my fear and my sadness about all the shit that went down in my life as an edge-working mother, surrounded by and imposed upon by modern culture, none of that diminishes the exquisite beauty and joy that I also experienced getting to be the mother to 4 extraordinary human beings. This talk today is part of an ongoing mother graduation series of initiations that I have chosen to undergo. Today, 3 out of 4 of my children are grown-ups. My eldest daughter turned 18 in the summer of 2020. My youngest daughter is 13. And I have been grappling hard to discern my place and my role and my purpose on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis as a mother of a teenage girl with whom contact between her and I has been interfered with. And I'm not saying that I am in any way giving up my responsibility as her mother. I am saying that the choices, conscious and unconscious, of other people have made it very difficult for me to live out my responsibility as her mother. All that to say, my mothering is not quite over yet. And yet, in ways, it has been ended against my will. And as I stand here, seeing how over the life of my motherhood, I have been a single mother, a married mother, a separated mother, a divorced mother. I've been a homeless mother. I've been a mother who was diagnosed unprofessionally and professionally as mentally ill. I have been a powerful leading mother, and I have been a mother beat up, bleeding and crying in a ditch. The only kind of mother that I haven't been is the mother of my wildest dreams. A mother with the partner by my side, at my back, surrounded by a village of archetypal humans and archetypal humans in the making. And I believe that the gift of my life is to know the pain and be able to speak to it from lived experience of being a mother without a village. Being a mother without the initiations that would happen in a next culture archiarchy village. And so here today I stand for what I am. a bringer of that culture, an experimenter, a brave experimenter who is helping to make it possible for others to become oriented towards something else, something that is not killing off the mother of us all. I've heard myself say many times over the last months that I am here to help Gaia, Mother Earth's risky human experiment to succeed. I notice here today how much sense that makes, because my risky human experiment, becoming the mother of 4, has given me insights that inform what it might be like for this planet to produce us and see us suffer, see us behave in misguided ways as children, and to be alone in that experience with a faraway man sun shining, who, it could be said, is the source of life on this planet, who is worshipped, who is named as God, or as if God, and yet who's very light in relationship with the structures of Earth, casts shadow. And I'm not here to say that any of it is wrong or bad or right or good. It's just what happens. The men who fathered my 4 children, and there are 3 of them, were for a long time the focuses of my intention for healing and transformation. I wanted more for them. I wanted more for them because somewhere inside me, I recognized that men are the first casualties of the capitalist patriarchy, born into the slavery of being the designated masters of the game world. A man who refuses to play in the patriarchal capitalist game does not have many places to go at all. As a woman, on the other hand, as an edge worker like myself, I could find and create sanctuaries, spaces where patriarchal capitalism barely touched. And it was devastatingly painful enough for me, with the privilege of living in that bubble of something else, to be in that bubble within the bigger bubble of modern culture, patriarchy, capitalism. It took a long time for me to turn my attention from the men to myself. It took a lot for me to turn my attention from my children to myself, and I am still struggling with that. But I have been empowered in some new ways that I always had an intuitive, primal sense were important. And that's what I want to talk more about here today. The key that I found that turns me away from the ordinary of modern culture towards the extraordinary of next culture are these 4 feelings that I have the capacity to feel. Modern culture tells us that our anger and our sadness and our fear and even our joy are bad and wrong. They are not okay. Anger means that you're uncivilized, dangerous, a brute. Fear means that you're weak and that you're incapacitated and that you're probably not that smart. Sadness means that you're a bit of a lost cause and a big downer and not really countable on. And joy, even joy, means that you probably don't really see what's going on, or you're probably on drugs. And most people's reaction, even those of us who have clarity in our minds and who have clarity coming into ourselves about these 4 feelings and these 4 emotions, often balk when someone in front of us starts having them as a reactionary, conditioned reaction to emotions. That's how deep it runs. Even someone like me who has for decades advocated for emotion and feeling to happen and bring its energy and information balks still sometimes when I see someone start to have emotions. And so for the last 5, 10, I can't even count years, I have been gradually making my way to more distinct territory, to a new map of emotion and feeling, to maps of processes that can be used so that emotion can be for healing, while feelings can be for handling things. My anger has been so numbed. My habit of hiding it, suppressing it, denying it, freezing it, muting it, pretending it's not there, and the only other alternative of having it and wrecking things with it, hurting people, and waking up later appalled, ashamed, and so grieved that I'd let myself be pushed that far, that I had let myself be a doormat for so long, that reactivity was just what was going to happen. No wonder they called me crazy. No wonder they called me selfish and irresponsible and out of control. No wonder. Underneath, I was never any of those things. I was a mother pushed to her limits, threatened with exclusion, threatened with banishment, threatened with disapproval, threatened with a withdrawal of support and love. And the little girl in me was adapting and adapting and adapting, desperate to stay in the shelter of humanity, even if that humanity was so tainted and warped and spun and messed the fuck up as it is. Especially for the sake of my children. To be there for them and be what they needed. I was ready to die. I was ready in a moment not that long ago to kill myself off so that they would be free of the craziness that I was bringing them in moments where I couldn't contain it. These moments were not one upon the other, upon the other, upon the other. These moments were brief, short, with hours, days, months between them, filled with very incredible mothering. Yet my standards reflected the standards that modern culture puts on mothers. High as fuck. And it was so hard to live with any little bit of pain that I caused my children. And there were times when I caused them more pain than I could even bear to realize I was causing them. Telling myself that their dad had them, that someone else was taking care of it, that, I had no choice, that they still had the mothering that they had got from me, the nurturing, the love, the book reading, the teaching them how to do the things that would carry them through. And I have had to, time and time again, trust that what they receive through me as their human mother and what they receive through this planet, this earth, is enough to keep them from that door of taking their own lives. And I honestly can't tell you if I'm more afraid that they would do that, or if I'm more afraid that they would let themselves become zombies in the modern culture game world, let themselves become cogs in the machine, grieving and dying inside slowly, thinking themselves not enough or too much, thinking themselves without choice, thinking themselves unfree to let their voices, their true voices, be heard, their true desires be seen and known, the truth of themselves, all of their feelings, their emotions, that they would have to numb them, freeze them, hide them, deny them, like I have. Last night, I participated in the North American Trainer Path call, the weekly call that we possibility managers who are on the trainer path in North America participate in. And we had an opportunity to use our anger consciously to speak about something that matters to us. And I was surprised to hear myself say, while I was using conscious anger, so many things about what I'd learned as a midwife attended new mother. I spent a couple of hours last night writing about it, talking about it to nobody in particular, not even noticing the connection between what I was saying last night and what I woke up with this morning, on this morning of my eldest son's 30th birthday. That he is meeting this milestone of turning 30 without connection with his mother, possibly without connection with his father, either of his two sisters or his brother. I don't know how many friends he's in touch with. I do know that he's been camping in the Canadian winter. He posted recently that he's been 2 months sober. And I feel so sad that my next thought was to wonder whether it was true or not. But what I want to do as a gift to my son today is send this message out to other mothers. The message that lets you know that it's possible to reclaim, experiment with, and become masterful with your anger and with your sadness, fear, and joy, but first anger, because anger is what I believe makes us a crucible for transformation. It struck me yesterday as I was thinking about how my angry heart is a heart on fire, like depicted in Roman Catholicism, the Virgin Mary's flaming heart. Maybe she was so revered because she had her anger. I mean, who wouldn't have it after watching their son be crucified? And yet, we as women, as females, have been told over and over and over that our anger makes us unlovable. Our anger makes us crazy and wrong and bad. Our anger makes it justified that we would be abandoned, excluded, hurt, killed. As I've been speaking here today, I've been holding in my hands this sword. It's a very hard plastic sword that belongs to my son. And I've been using it over these past weeks as a sword of clarity. As I've been standing, I've been twisting it in my hands to help myself be in touch with my anger. Because I noticed last night, after the call I was telling you about, I noticed how my anger started to dwindle as my sadness started to rise up, and the emotion of my sadness started to like dampen the fire of my anger. And I knew that if I was going to speak today like I wanted to, that I was going to need some way to keep myself present, keep my anger present, and at a high enough level that I could be holding my center, speaking my truth, keeping sadness and fear from caving in and cutting me off. And during this call at the 2:30 mark, I will be leading you through an experiment where you can try out what it's like, or practice once again what you know it can be like, to let yourself turn on and up your anger to the highest intensity you can get it to for 3 minutes. This is a process, an experiment that I've been doing for several months now. And it blows my mind how much I'm learning from 3 minutes, 3 times a week of high intensity anger that I had no idea about before. I'm 50 years old. If I could have been trained up as a conscious user of anger, sadness, fear, and joy from childhood or even from young adulthood, it blows my mind to think how different my life would have been. And I can't change the past, but I can do something here and now today that might change how things go from here. And I want humans to have access to their anger so that we can say no to things that there are to say no to, so that we can declare things that we have to declare, so that we can choose from that space of informed choice how we are going to navigate these crazy times. There's been a lot of talk about standing up for freedom, and that scares me because where's the responsibility in some people's ideas of freedom? So anger, working in tandem with fear. There's been so much talk about no fear, don't be afraid. And I say, make fear your friend, listen to it. Let it do its magic in you to awaken you to your senses, to awaken you to the differences between this and that, so that when then anger is used to make decisions and to create and to destroy, that we're using it responsibly, and that the consequences aren't the kinds of consequences like I experienced when I used anger unconsciously and irresponsibly. And there's so much to grieve, so much to feel sadness about. There's so much sadness that, as far as I can tell, is stuck in humans, all mixed together and knotted up with fear and anger and even joy, causing these blocks, these numb, frozen spaces in us that we have to navigate around, that we barely know we're navigating around because it's so normal. It's all we've known for maybe lifetimes. So here I am making a stand for the learning, the exploring, and the transformation that becomes possible when we learn and explore in directing the power of conscious feelings and applying what we learn so that we can experience what it is to live extraordinary lives on an extraordinary planet. And I'm not even going to pretend or bother to predict about whether enough of us will do this in time to turn the ship so that it doesn't just crash over the edge of the world. I don't know if we'll be able to keep our species from going extinct or from taking a path of further destruction until what we mine and produce, the technology that can then blast us off into space in search of another world. I don't know how much you've thought about this stuff, but I've been eating it up since I was a teenager. From nuclear holocaust to space travel. And it's become so clear and dear to me to notice that I am made of my mother. This planet, my mother. The human mother that I have, so powerful and inept in her ways. And yet, again, as we all are, doing her absolute best with what she had, probably protecting herself against heartbreak around what she didn't have and couldn't do and couldn't be to save her kids from pain and suffering. So, Kay, thank you so much for coming here today. It's fitting that on a day where I had something so big to say, that at first it looked like no one would be here. And then it turned out that you would be the only one here. Because I know that from our sharing of stories, how much common ground we share. And while a part of me is absolutely heartbroken that more people aren't here to witness and to go into a question part, that it means the world to me that you are here. And there's so many people who I've talked to and connected with over the past months since I met you, to whom I've said, oh my God, you have to meet, you have to listen to, you have to read the words and the majesty of this extraordinary human, Kay Vogt. And as I was kind of in the back of my mind integrating that you had arrived and I hadn't said anything, and that then how determined I am to have this go out as a recording like Anne Chloe has asked, and the potential kind of diminishment of it as an audience of one. And yet I think of Fibonacci, you know, it starts with 0 and 1, and then there's one more. And then there's 2 and 3 and 5 and 8, and on it goes until the universe exists or is recreated. So thank you for being my number one.
My pleasure. It's really powerful. Really powerful. And what occurred to me while you were talking was, if women were really in touch with our anger, we would be in the streets. You know, the world would have already changed from our anger. And no blame, because, you know, it's all happening the way it's happening. And I resisted doing this rage work for years, really for the past 4 years, because I never really understood what it was and what it could give me. And you're talking here today, it's just really inspiring that you've done the work, that you see the power, that you're claiming your space, you're claiming your words, you're claiming your anger. And there's nothing more powerful. So I'm so glad I was here to see you.
Thank you. I also have this really visceral experience of being at the very beginning of it. And even though I have a memory from, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, where for one of the first times that I remember, instead, like something happened and I felt angry, and I kind of, what would happen with me, and I'm sure every human would surely relate, that I'm triggered, I feel angry, I turn that into action, and I send the email too soon, or I make a phone call that goes badly, but in this moment 6 or 7 years ago, I had so much anger that what I did was I went into a big open space in the house I was living in, and I planted my feet on the ground and I bent my knees, and I think the words that came out were, "How dare you!" It was another time when the father of one of my children had pulled a power move on me. And I could see the consequences that had been happening and now were being perpetuated by this power move. And the rage. And I think really that day, for the first time, I felt that kind of, that like natural power, and the value, the goodness, like not that it's good or bad, but the wisdom of it, and the inevitability of it, and the possibility of it. And I did, for the first time, kind of go, wait a minute, what's here for me in this anger? And part of that came because of the fear that I felt, that was like, oh my God, that packs a wallop. Be careful with that. Because that's the kind of power that cuts off heads.
Mm-hmm.
And the mama bear was activated by the father bear. I can't take him out. What would happen with my children if I took out their father? And yet he had, in very real ways, taken me out, made it impossible for me to be in with my children. But this thing about, this thing about starting over almost every day, every morning, every moment, as a beginner, still was so much to learn about anger, and having it and using it consciously.
Yeah. Yes. And so I notice a thing happening since going to your 333, and thank you for that. I live with 12 people, and so there's lots of ways to be annoyed with each other. And the point of me saying all this is nipping this patriarchal shame and discouragement in women, me asking for what I want. And it was over the stupidest thing. It's over a garlicky bowl that he has salad in for breakfast every day. And I asked him, I've been thinking of this for months, of how to say this thing, this stupid little thing. So finally the moment was right, you know, we were both standing up. He wasn't eating, and there's his stinky bowl that that's there for hours. And I said, "Would you rinse your bowl?" And I knew that it was he wanted to know more details about that. When did I want him to rinse his bowl? Before he eats or after he eats? Or and I knew it wasn't going to be the end of it. So I got this email from him saying that I didn't ask him in the right way, and that I needed to ask him in the correct way, which is sandwiching a compliment in between the adjustment and then another compliment, before he would feel good about doing what I was asking. And I, I was speechless, and I was just like, I'm nipping this in the bud, and I'm not going to talk to him about it, only because he doesn't feel safe to talk about it. And so I called a meeting of four, you know, the house mother and four people. And fortunately, she had heard him complaining about me in the kitchen about not asking him in the correct way. And, you know, I just, without apology and without um, attack, stood my ground. And by the end of that conversation, he said, "Yeah, I knew I was breaking a rule, you know, by not doing that, and somehow I had to make it your fault." And it's like that's why I'm afraid to say these things, you know. It's like, but it just takes that warrior energy even for that stupid small little thing. And I'm just done with taking the passive aggressive, the "you didn't ask me the right way," the um whatever it is from not just men, but for anyone. But I
Mhm.
do notice men uh have more of a problem with correction. And I think it's not to disparage men in any way, but I think it's that they hate making mistakes and they hate being called out. And because women raise boys, we always sound like the mother, because fathers are never correcting their kids. Fathers aren't correcting their sons about those kinds of domestic things. And so it immediately triggers this mother rebellion. So anyway, a very small thing that is not a small thing.
Certainly not, especially when I consider how many small things happen in every day over so many weeks and years and decades. And I remember what it was like for me to kind of get the directive. How can I give you what you want if you don't ask for it? And yet I had had so many experiences like the one you just described, where I did want something, and I made a very clear, step to have what I wanted, and it was wrong. It didn't work. It wasn't the right way. And so to hear that it was on me to be more clear, be more, and yet at the same time, I was condemned and damned and reacted to every time I was what I was being told I needed to be. It's like I couldn't win for losing. And even if I won, I lost. Because, if I did kind of win that argument, it would be costing me from that day on, because it would be held as evidence that I was this crazy, out of control thing that made things harder.
Well, and there's a vested interest in having you believe that so that you don't ask for what you want, so that you don't speak your truth.
Yeah, and I like you, like what you just said, that you're done. Like what I hear in that is that you're at the limit of what you were willing to adapt to. And
Well, and that, I guess it could have come out any way, it might not have come out that way, but that I'm okay however it comes out, and whatever their opinion is of me after. And I mean, it honestly felt like jumping off the high dive, like when I like,
yeah,
it's so silly. It's so silly. I'm embarrassed, like that's a thing.
I so relate to that embarrassment. I live with two men, and yesterday something happened where one of them wanted to use something that belongs to me, and the way they asked was it as if like it was appalling that I wasn't already like making it available to them. And they even started telling me that, the way I was using it was like unnecessary. And I was just like, okay, it's okay, no, here you go, now you can use it. And as I was doing that, I was like, there was a part of me that was like, what all this anger work you've done, and you're just letting him be like an entitled 6-year-old. And this other part of me, maybe the part that's coming to life, said, actually, you're choosing this consciously. You're not just doing it, you're choosing to do it more consciously than ever before. You're not just reacting and being like, okay, here you go, here you go. I paused and I chose. And that in itself was, again, very different from what I've been learning to do, and yet what I had been doing. Like there was a subtle difference that I could still celebrate.
Yeah, you didn't do the automatic thing. There was an intervening.
Yeah. And I can't help but wonder if I'm giving myself a bit of a consolation prize, because I
You know
was
what?
too scared to say, no, you can't have it till I'm done.
I'm
And
dying to know what the thing is. What's the thing?
it was a laundry rack that he wanted
Oh,
to
okay.
hang his clothes on.
Oh,
That I had clothes that were still drying.
oh.
And he insisted
Well,
that they were dry. And I was like, no, they're not.
that's a good one. So, yeah, what I have to say about that, I bet you're going to get another chance. I bet you're going to get a do-over of some kind,
Yeah.
you
I mean,
know.
even as I sit here, I'm like, ooh, what are the possibilities? Now that I'm in this kind of space with you, where it's like it's okay not to cave to the, the man's needs and his perspective and his insistence about how things are, and even just to say something along the lines of, hey, from now on, I'll be keeping my laundry rack in my room. I noticed in most stores that you can buy them, so you could have one too.
Sounds good.
Or maybe, if you want to rent my laundry rack from me, it's like $5 a shot from now on.
That's good too.
Or you could hire me to do your laundry once a week for 50. I came up with that number without thinking about any math.
Yeah. Or in 12 hours when it's really dry, if you want to fold all these things and put them in my room, I will let you use my rack.
Ooh, my God. See, I didn't even think of that possibility. Yeah. Still so adaptive.
We have a laundry rack situation here too, and when I moved in, I didn't know there was just a laundry rack in the basement that was empty, and I put my, hand washed a couple of things on it, and the next time I came down, they were on top of the washer, and I was told that, um, this was his rack, and he puts his clothes on it, and no one else. He got permission from the house, which, happened before I got here. But, like, he didn't apologize or make it nice or, it's just like, "This is mine. Your stuff's over there."
Yeah. There's so many. I mean, in a way, I feel glad to kind of consider this in the light of how many opportunities there are to like experiment and practice and apply what I'm learning from my 333 rage work. And life seems so rich from that perspective. And another thing I wanted to talk about and go back to is the part about the new mother, because I
Mm,
know that your daughter recently became a mother for the first time.
mhm,
And part of what I have going on in my story right now is that I stepped forward to offer a couple that I know who are about to have their first baby. I offered to host and create and kind of MC a village gathering on Zoom where they could call their village together, and it would be a kind of a ceremony type 2 hours, before which and after which there were like threads of conversation about how the village wanted to participate, how each villager wanted to participate in this transformative like phase, like shift
mm,
from them being a couple to being parents, from her being, a young free modern woman to being a mother, from this baby, being like a unseeable lump under his mummy's tummy to being like a human in the world. And I know that so much of my interest in making offers like that comes from I don't think I ever had a baby shower for
mm,
any of my 4 children. I don't remember ever gathering in the spirit of, oh, I'm about to have a baby. Here's, gifts from the village.
mm,
Let alone, I have some memories about people from like our circles bringing gifts. I remember a young woman I know who she herself couldn't have children. And before my younger son was born, or just after, she came to my house wielding this glorious rocking chair. And she just put it down. She's like, "This is for you and the baby." And it's funny, talk about these small things like, please wash your bowl. Like it was such a small thing and such a big thing at the same time, that she showed up to give me that rocking chair. She hadn't planned on buying me something. She had been at the thrift shop, I think, or at a garage sale, and she'd seen it and she just thought, "I'm getting that for Nicole." I think she told me it was $15. And then she plopped it in her car and drove straight to my house. That's the story
mm.
I remember. It might not be what happened.
Well, it's huge, it's a huge act of attention and love and generosity. And when you talk about doing this for this couple, it's like it can only come from someone, I'm gonna say our age, although I'm older than you, but it can't come from their generation, in the same manner. And it's like, um, I think it's a really beautiful I was going to say gesture. It's more than a gesture. A gift that you're giving them, that just like that small, what you call a small act of the rocking chair, probably, it's like a pebble in the water, and it's going to inspire other acts. Not to mention having that healing process for yourself, like giving what you didn't receive.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the chance to talk with them, I think it was yesterday, and I know the male partner, the man in this scenario. I have a lot more relational experience with him than I do with his partner, the mother. And it was he who kind of described how at first when I offered this, he kind of thought, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Thanks, Nicole. And that as things have started to unfold, he described that he had started to really feel the like warmth of it, he said. And he kind of seemed to speak to something that was richer to him than he had first been able to perceive or receive. And it was very touching for me to kind of see that molehill be made into a mountain. And
well, he can't perceive it because it doesn't exist yet. You're introducing a new thing.
And that also speaks to these levels of knowing too, I think, that we touched on around like anger work and like being at the beginning of it. It's like I'm always at the beginning of the next level of knowing, because these distinctions and these kind of the way things are, the understanding of it, it dawns on us. It kind of, the sunshine hits our head and we get a notion of it. And then we start to be able to really see it. Then we start to really hear it and sense it. And we maybe start to be able to talk about it. And then it starts to touch our hearts. We start to really feel about it. And then, and then we digest it maybe, and then it kind of, that's how things go from being talking the talk to walking the talk, or walking the walk and living in it. Like the difference between talking about it and doing it. And yet I feel really glad that it is gradual, because there's so many things I can act on before they really get into me. And I really want to get where I'm going faster.
Well, I mean, it's such an exciting game, right? Like there's no ceiling.
Yeah.
There's always more.
Yeah, there's no bottom to the trash can, hey. Do you have anything from your experience of being with your daughter in the early days of...
Oh gosh, one of the things I was thinking the other day is watching her come into her own authority by, virtue of keeping this baby alive and fed, and, seeing to his well-being. And it's just a joy to watch her love her son, and how both she and her husband, boy, what a different age they're in. They both have like 6 months off from their jobs, and he is equally devoted to parenting. And I don't think this kid spends 10 minutes alone without somebody like looking at him and making a face or saying something to him. Which, this isn't about my daughter, but like what a different experience of bonding for the father, and what a difference that's going to make for the child's entire life.
Yeah.
So rather than the husband going off a few days after the birth, comes home to a tired wife who's bonded with the baby and he's not. And this whole cycle of deprivation and alienation starts with the couple and hopelessness that, I just see how this time they have together is such a gift. And and yeah, watching her learn how to be a mom, by the crying and the poops and the all the things. Yeah, it's just fun watching her mature and come into her power in that way. And she doesn't think a thing about asking him to do anything. It's like,
I'm so glad.
what?
I'm so glad.
Yeah, yeah. And he'll be there and say, "What do you need right now? Do you need space? Do you need me to listen? Do you need empathy? Do you
Wow.
want me to do something? Like, who are you?" Like,
Wow.
yeah, phenomenal.
Mm. Oh gosh. Like so many things could be said, so many stories could be told, so many micro, macro, meso kind of levels that this unfolding that's happening kind of manifests. And
Well, it makes me just know, at least on that level, in that instance, the world is changing. The world has changed
yeah.
a lot, like since she was born. And you're going to change it a little bit more with your ritual, with your village ritual.
Yeah, it's been beautiful to have had I joined a workshop with a mutual friend of ours, of the couple and me, and who had a baby 3 years ago. And she was very, very much a part of the community that we're all part of. And she's been a real leader in that community. She's brought a lot to the community. And when she had her baby, of course, her ability to participate in the community, went way down. And because the community had never really kind of worked out yet how to keep a new mother surrounded, um, you know, including me, I noticed that we weren't seeing her. I reached out on a few occasions that seemed like compelling and key, and yet there was so many other times that nobody reached out, and that she couldn't. She just didn't have it in her to do. And
Hmm.
it reminds me again of how the onus is put on the person with the least resources, who's most often kind of in the female feminine range or role, to do it right. And people, and she, oh my gosh, the suffering she went into. She got to the point of psychosis with sleep deprivation and the
Hmm.
nutritional deficiencies that were happening. A community leader who
Yeah.
had given all this time and effort to build community was now suffering because there wasn't enough community, or how we were doing it wasn't working or wouldn't work for mothers. And so now she's she's got herself back. And some of those steps involved making very brave asks of the community to help support her healing back to health and availability. And she's done this training as a very kind of in-depth, kind of almost semi-indigenous type doula training. It's about postpartum care for mothers. And it's so, the workshop that I went to, she presented these, these things that women need in order to heal in the short term, and also in order to, she had information that connected these scientific studies to, what happens at menarche when a young woman starts to bleed, and then what happens at postpartum when she bleeds again after giving birth, and then what happens at menopause when she stops bleeding, and how their medical studies are tying this all together and saying, deficiencies at these two times can lead to really big difficulties, and there's kind of a restart at each of those 3 points.
Wow, it's really, really interesting, and something I've never heard about. And like many things involving women, it's the whole birth process is minimized, as some women go back to work a week later, 2 weeks later.
Yeah, and what has always struck me as funny about that is that there are people who point to indigenous cultures and they say that, these indigenous tribal women will go out in the fields, give birth, strap their baby on, and get back to work. And I don't know if there is somewhere that happens, but all the other information I have about indigenous cultures is not that.
Yeah, what I've heard is for 40 days, the woman is surrounded by women and by the village and does nothing except nurse her baby, and people bring her food and clean her house and take care of the other children, and she has no duties except the baby and herself.
Yeah, and I heard even addition to that about keeping her wrapped and massaging her and anointing her and with oil and bringing all these different medicinal healing herbs and broths and making her this nice warming food. And even in some cultures, they have a special bed where there's actually a fire built underneath it so that her bed is warmed. And it's like, even in a hot climate, just because this warmth is so healing. And what was added to that was recent studies in first aid and medical care that points to the ice pack as this great error in understanding of how healing happens, and which blew my mind, because I have never wanted ice ever when I got hurt. I've only ever wanted warmth, and I kind of privately wondered if something was wrong with me. And so that was one of those moments where I was kind of redeemed in my intuition and in my kind of primal sense that warmth is what is wanted during healing. And I did a little bit of a kind of search about, like, well, then why have we got this idea that cold is a thing at all? I mean, we all have bodies. Don't we all not want cold? And what came out of it was how cold can be used to reduce swelling very quickly and to numb the surface of an injured area. And it's only ever meant to be a very short-term thing while the guy, gets back to his truck and drives himself somewhere where he can get the warmth he needs. Mm-hmm. Having, or like a more of a military situation, or that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but wonder how many more of those things there are.
Yeah, well, and
And
especially
I've run
since,
into many.
well, and a lot of the medical studies are done on men, like they don't even have women in the research study,
Yeah, I remember
like for heart
learning about that
disease.
too. I remember someone saying that medical really means manical, manical or something.
Yeah, we need it. We need our anger, Nicole.
Yeah. It, it brings me back to one of the uses for anger that's really been standing out for me. And that is what you were saying about having authority, like you were describing your daughter as having her power, having her authority to ask for what she wants and this whole idea of being centered and being grounded and having a bubble of space as a personal energetic boundary, and this whole idea of giving your center away. And I have have become more familiar with this visceral experience that like that I kind of like let someone else have the mental authority by kind of deferring, that I let someone else speak by holding back my voice and being this great listener. And that
Mm-hmm.
my heart goes out sometimes, and definitely my solar plexus, like my emotional authority, I kind of like end up kind of bleh. And then there's that deeper place in the hips where it just makes so much sense that birth would wake up a woman's like kind of energetic authority, because it blasts you wide open and brings so much activity into this place where that kind of holy fire, kind of sacral kind of center exists.
Yes, 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 yes. Not to mention the unquestionable credibility of pushing an actual human out of your body.
Right.
It's like, mm, I think I did that.
Oh yeah. In the friends workshop that I was talking about, she talked about the validation that a woman kind of gets and then also needs almost affirmed, or where there's a role that community can play, coming to a new mother and saying, you did it,
Mm-hmm.
this phenomenal thing, you did it. And it made me think when I was in that workshop about this little object. This is a little clay pot that I have had now for almost 30 years. My midwife, when Sagan was born, the main midwife that had given me the prenatal care was actually not there. I was attended by her partner and their apprentice. And when Wendy Clemens came back from Mexico, I visited with her. She wanted to see the baby. This woman just lived and breathed and oozed maternal motherhood. Her intuition was impeccable. She's so the epitome of the mother. And she brought me this and she said, in Mexico, they say that a woman who's given birth for the first time is like a pot that's been fired.
Mm.
She's not pliable anymore. She's like whatever form she is, she's that now. And I remember that going into me. It was like you've done it. you're a woman now. And nobody had said that until she said it. And I don't think anybody else ever said it. And I can just imagine what it would be like to have villager after villager after villager come to a new mother and say, you did it. You're a woman now.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love that. And all that also not to take away from women who choose not to be mothers.
Yes, because there are other initiations.
Choose or don't choose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, in a way you have that, we have that energy available for whatever is the object of our passion.
Mm. After several years of after having been what I think of as being fired as a mother to my two daughters while they were still quite young, I came across a framed like painting or poem in a thrift shop, and it said your dreams are the children of your soul.
Mm.
And I cried more than once about that phrase, because having given up my children, I kind of came to this place over and over where I had a choice about giving up my dreams also.
Mm.
And damned if I was going to give up the children of my soul as well as the children of my body. And it's really hard when I have this idea that I'm having to make a choice between mothering my still, motherable age daughter and following my dreams. And I've noticed in the past few weeks, since having less of an anchored experience in regard to my son, that I have a new one that I'm tending to in regard to my youngest daughter. As I again start to consider leaving Calgary and leaving her.
Mm.
I thought we'd resolved that because we talked about how for so long she's lived with her dad. She's really in his world. We could connect, especially since COVID, we've learned that we can connect, digitally, don't have to see each other in person. How different is that going to be if I'm in another part of the world? We just have to figure out how to get her bus pass to her because I buy her bus pass. And usually I bring it to her. So there's like a new level of feeling torn.
Mm. I can imagine.
I'm noticing that it's 2:33 and that Kalita hasn't come in to do the 3 minutes of anger. But how about we go ahead and do that now?
Sounds good. Are you going to record it? Continue recording?
You know what? No, I won't, because I can tell people who are watching the video replay of this that if you want to know what the 333 rage looks like, if you want to be coached through it yourself, you can go to a different video link that's already out there. So I'll just say a little goodbye here to those of you who have been watching or listening. Thank you for listening in. Please get in touch with me if you have any questions or you want to have further conversation. And get in touch with Kay too about, oh my gosh, I was going to at one point loop back around to women's power and sexuality, which you're an expert about from my point of view. So let me just leave that little tasty tidbit there for people to Google you and search you and reach out to you about.
Well, my
You want to say
Google,
anything about it?
it's good.
Yeah. Be teased, people. Be teased.